Greetings, citizens! My name is FailureToReport, and it's that time of year again. Well, technically it's a little past that time of year, but to the point, Citizencon approaches. Now, if you're newer to Star Citizen, maybe this is your first Citizencon. So, you might be asking, what is all the fuss about? Citizencon is by far Star Citizen's largest marketing extravaganza. It normally falls on the anniversary of the project launching, but this year it's coming a month later. While we always have the roadmap to look at things and go, Jesus, this got pushed again? Or, oh nice, they're finally working on my ship. Citizencon is where we get deep looks at the project state and where it's heading. For instance, ArcCorp was demoed for the first time at Citizencon back in 2017 and later released this year. It's during Citizencon that we get a bit more of a long format look at where the project is versus the short snippets of the various YouTube series that Cloud Imperium normally produces. So in today's video, we're going to be talking about what I hope to see coming from Citizencon this year and what I absolutely have no desire to even hear Chris mutter. Now, while they do have various panels discussing things about the project such as sound design, graphical work, and inevitably Tony Zurich talking about some insanely overcomplicated mechanic for dealing with anything from crime to how your character will digest food, there is always a bit of mystery on what gets announced or covered at Citizencon during the opening and closing segments, most notably the keynote speech delivered by Chris Roberts, the man, the myth, the legend himself. So, let's start this video out on a more positive angle and talk about the things that I would like to see Chris discussing. This way, if you want to stay all rosy-cheeked and innocent, you can bounce out at the halfway point of this video and not get all upset or jaded if that's the life you want to live. Now, first and foremost, this one is going to be mentioned in the I do want to hear about section as well as the I don't want to hear it section. There have been no shortage of rumors that Pyro is coming soon, which means a whole new solar system to derp around in the verse. While Star Citizen currently has about 70% of its only solar system, Stanton, completed, I'd be lying if I said a change of scenery wouldn't be welcomed. My reservation, however, is in the form of jump points and how they will work. You see, the last time Chris sat down and gave any kind of real in-depth talk about how he wanted jump points to work was back in 2015. They demoed a video of an Anvil Gladiator twisting and looping and maneuvering through a wormhole to travel from one system to another, and briefly spoke about how different systems will have different sized jump points, and that not all systems will be connected depending on the size of your ship. So let's say you have an Origin 315P Explorer, and you're in our current solar system Stanton. You would be able to travel directly to Pyro because the point connecting Stanton to Pyro is a medium-sized jump point. Now, let's say your friend is sitting in his Origin 890 jump. He would not be able to travel directly to Pyro because he's in a capital class ship and would need to use a large jump point, which means traveling from Stanton to Terra to Hadrian to Castra to Pyro. So, it should be clear by now that adding in a new solar system adds some complexity for ship owners. If you are one of those people who only has a large ship, for instance, are you left unable to access Pyro? Will there be capital ship landing facilities in Pyro? Are these people expected to bum a ride from Stanton to Pyro and then be able to pull their ships? How will wormholes work exactly? Most people struggle to fly a Reclaimer or Starfarer through an asteroid field, much less ducking and dipping through a wormhole. Is that still the intended mechanic for travel? How long are we going to be in these wormholes playing the travel minigame? These are all questions I would love to see answered at Citizencon. If Cloud Imperium is going to be adding Pyro between Citizencon and next year, I really think it's time Chris sits down with backers and gives us a no bullshit plan for how he is going to be implementing cross-system travel. Not more, well, I think it might work like this. It's time to have some solid ideas so backers can prepare for it sooner rather than later, when CIG inevitably just drops it on us a month out. It's supposed to be open development that the community takes part in, right? It's a little late to give feedback for a game mechanic when it's in Evocati testing versus a year out and being openly discussed with the entire community. Another major thing for Star Citizen and evidently Squadron 42 that I think absolutely needs to be discussed in depth is server-side object container streaming. If the last year of the persistent universe has demonstrated anything, it's that the servers are basically bursting at the seams, and Cloud Imperium has insisted for a long time now that the golden fix is going to be server-side OCS. That's what's going to be fixing all the lag, That's what's going to fix the servers shitting out on everyone and people losing their ship full of cargo out of nowhere. Server-side OCS is the Jesus patch now. And with it being nowhere on the roadmap, I think it's time to have a long talk about it. Chris needs to get up on the stage and not only talk about server-side OCS, but be honest about where it is at in its development and what it's going to actually do for the PU. Again, let me stress this part. Realistically, what it's going to do for Star Citizen. Star Citizen has always had this next great piece of tech that CIG is working on behind closed doors that's going to magically fix all of the problems. And while part of that mentality is on backers, CIG definitely helps nudge this notion with how much they hype things like OCS, server-side OCS, bind calling, server meshing, and so on. Years back, they were insisting that once they had their planetary procedural generation tool set up, they were going to be churning out planets, and yet it's nearly the end of 2019, and we still don't have the full promised features of the original patch 3.0 that finally arrived a year late in 2017. So to reiterate once more, CIG needs to talk about when this system is realistically going to be deliverable and what it will actually do for the game. Spare backers the BS and the hype promises. Another thing I would really like to see CIG talk about at Citizencon is the ship concepts that have been outstanding for years. We've had a few ships go direct to flight ready at concept. We've had a few ships go from concept and then flight ready in a couple of months. This is a pretty big slap in the face to backers who have been holding on to ships like the Carrack, Merchantman, Genesis Starliner, Redeemer, Hull Series, Crucible, and so forth. I always see people bring this up on Spectrum, in comments, or on Reddit, and there's always, without fail, a passionate backer who jumps to CIG's defense with comments like, well, they aren't making those ships because they don't have their gameplay loops yet, except they are, overwhelmingly. The majority of ships currently flyable don't have their associated gameplay to go with them. While I'm very aware that Star Citizen survives off selling new concepts to pay for the continued development, it feels a bit dirty when they sell a new shiny and that one shows up in-game before the people who pledged for the old shiny. Especially when Cloud Imperium has worked so hard over the last 2 years to devalue old pledge money. Saying, oh well, just melt the old stuff and buy the new one with store credit then, doesn't really fly anymore when you pay an artificial premium for using credit and you lose out on lifetime insurance now. One of the other major things I would like to see from Cloud Imperium this year is in the same vein as planets and systems. Make the damn universe feel like it's alive. The year is 2019. It's 7 years after the Kickstarter finished, and the persistent universe is still a barren wasteland sandbox. There's no AI traffic, there's no procedurally generated encounters outside of getting jerked out of quantum travel, and God help CIG if I get started on what a desolate, empty wasteland their planetary bodies are. There should be smaller outposts you can come across procedurally generated on the ground, wrecks with survivors who will pay you to evacuate them to safety, outlaw camps with actual resources and gear you can salvage after clearing them out. While everyone wants to go on and on and on about how beautiful Star Citizen's planets are and how there's so much content on them, compare them to literally any other space game and they're a pretty backdrop for taking screenshots, and that's it. They're completely void of life. If Cloud Imperium can't start transitioning to providing procedural content on their planets and in space real damn soon, it's going to start looking more and more bleak that Chris Roberts can pull off this living, breathing universe where NPCs outnumber players 9-1, and you won't even be able to tell if you're interacting with a player or an NPC. It looks even more grim when you consider how lifeless the Stanton system is years after it's been introduced, and it's still not completed, yet Star Citizen is at 7 years and still has nearly 100 more solar systems to create. Now, I understand if you're one of those passionate backers and you need a scapegoat, so you're about to start saying something like, wow, you're so entitled, blah, blah, blah. But this isn't me demanding something unrealistic from Cloud Imperium. This whole topic is based on Cloud Imperium promises. They said years ago that they would easily be able to deliver the dozens of solar systems thanks to their procedural planet tech, and only having to do developer touches for things like major outposts and cities. Instead, what we've gotten has been a trickle of planetary bodies that are all but empty, and a handful of missions that spawn encounters on those planets, ranging from black box recovery in a wreck to clearing out a bunker of NPCs. If backers don't start expecting more out of this project, Chris is gonna die of old age before he ever has a chance to deliver on any of the promises he's made. You know what? To add on to the universe feeling alive and providing content to the empty planets, it still blows my mind that Chris and CIG have completely neglected planetary outposts. You can't spawn at them, you can't summon a vehicle from them, even though they have landing pads, you can't refuel or repair at them. I mean, who the hell builds a giant landing pad for taking deliveries but can't provide refueling services for the craft coming in to deliver goods? That's bonkers. We had fuel dumps at our small little ass landing pads for the scout helicopters in Iraq. You're telling me these big outposts with habitation facilities, mining facilities, agricultural processing facilities, and landing pads don't have the ability to refuel craft that are going to burn anywhere from 10 to 25% of their fuel just leaving the atmosphere, much less what they're going to burn traveling to you? One of Star Citizen's most advertised features is its planets, and yet they're just woefully underutilized outside of the misery hubs of places like Lorville. It shouldn't be that hard for CIG to plop down a proc gen module at some of these outposts that are just hab units for people who want to remain planetside. And it damn sure shouldn't be rocket science for enabling refueling services at a minimum for these outposts that already have landing pads. Like, come on, Chris. The last major thing that I would really, probably above all else, hope to see Chris talking about being a near-term goal is persistence. This one thing has such far-reaching implications across every aspect of Star Citizen that I simply don't understand how it isn't already a thing, and how it isn't front and center every single CIG communication until it is. Video games, especially MMOs, have had full persistence for years, like decades. There is absolutely zero excuse for why the servers don't save players' positions and states automatically so that if they log off, they're able to log back in where they were. If they're disconnected while hauling their life savings and cargo, they're able to log back into their ship with said cargo still intact. Persistence, or lack thereof, within Star Citizen is hands down the biggest reason I would never recommend the game to somebody asking me about it. While it is obviously a huge quality of life bump that ships would insurance claim with equipment they had on it when lost, that only covers the ship itself and not its contents. When you have a game where so much of its player base are aspiring space truckers or miners, it's a major issue that a completely unpredictable and unavoidable, yet all too common server crash means those players could lose thousands to hundreds of thousands in credits, not to mention the time they spent acquiring it. When it can take anywhere from 15 minutes to an hour to get into an activity you want to do in Star Citizen, having a server disconnect can literally leave you at your desktop wondering if it's really worth launching the game again. Now, I'm in a unique position where I have a lot of free time, and Star Citizen's random BS usually isn't an issue for me, but I've lost count of how many times I've tried to do missions or grind out some credits with friends only to suffer stuff like 30k server errors or client crashes and have that completely turn them off from playing because they knew we would have to start all over again from our respawn points. And the hour we spent meeting up and doing whatever we were doing, totally erased, poof, gone. It never happened. This doesn't, however, just fall to things like server crashes. For instance, I hate Spaceports with a passion. The only ones that are really tolerable to me are Port Olisar and Grim Hex because you can get in and out quickly, no trams, no trains, no long atmosphere to clear, no half-mile run between where you need to go and then back to your ship. Boom, no fuss. The problem, however, is that Port Olisar is very frequently infested with people pad ramming or people sitting outside of the Armistice Zone PvPing every passerby that they know they can kill in an uneven fight. And Hex, well, it's an awesome station, but it's also the default pirate outpost and where you're going to find most of the same people. See, if Star Citizen had reliable persistence, I'd be able to make my home anywhere in Stanton. Want to live and work off the various R&R stations? No problem. Maybe you want a Kolshuben mining facility your home. Done. However, more often than not, even bed logging in the ships that support it, I still end up logging in at the last spaceport I landed at because Star Citizen can't even get bed logging down reliably. Now, while there are some patches that have bed logging working better than others, you're still constantly in a state of fear that if something bad happens like a server crash, then you're waking up at the last major starport you landed at because those are the only places with habitation facilities. There are a lot of things I would love to see Chris Roberts get up on stage and talk about, But those are my major ones that would cover the next year until Citizencon 2020 for me. I would love to see a ton of other topics talked about, and I'm sure you're sitting there like, well shit, what about X and Y and Z? But I'm trying to keep this list short and only major things I'd like to see them cover over the next coming year. I would absolutely love to see them talk about things like auto gimbals, the flight model, dogfighting from things like weapon to ship balance, fuel systems because those have been absolute crap since 3.5, and many, many other concerns. The fact is, CIG only has so much time during the keynote address, so I tried to think of my biggest items I'd like to see them talk about. So, with that, let's talk about some of the crap I don't want to hear about. Like none. If you're one of those Star Citizen fans who gets easily offended, this is the part of the video where I suggest you check out. You obviously don't have to, but if you come into the comments crying about something I'm going to say from here on out, I'm going to respond to your comment in the exact same tone that you post. So, fair warning. Alright, let's get this list going. First and foremost, future crap. I think Citizencon 2018 was probably one of the best Citizencon CIG has ever put on because it wasn't an entire demo and tease of things that were years out or not even remotely realistic to be thinking about anytime soon. I know for a fact that after the keynote speech last year during the stream, I said something along the lines of, good on CIG, this is what they should be doing, talking about things that are being worked on now and things that are going to be releasing in the near future. I don't have any issue with CIG showing off things that they're working on that will be coming mid to late next year. I consider that stuff near-term work, but showing me stuff like Lear or Terra or some other demo that's clearly meant only to hype backer wallets into opening and doesn't even remotely resemble an addition to what we can actually play and use in the next 3+ years, that's a huge no for me. I don't want to see that crap. It serves zero purpose other than to drive people to say stuff like, where's my goddamn sandworm? Where's my dynamic weather system while I'm on the ground clearing out an SOS mission in a bandit camp? Where's my stealth takedowns? Where's my dynamic AI that's patrolling and ambushing as I come up to their camp? All that crap does every time CIG shows stuff off like that is 1. Drive backers into a sudden hype fervor so they will spend money, which is great for CIG on the short term, but drives jaded dissent after the smoke and mirrors clear and people realize it was nothing but sales hype. And 2, it gives unrealistic expectations of progress and the state of the development. Surely if they were demoing Lear and that Sandstorm and advanced AI and knife combat back in 2016, well, hey, we're super far along now in 2019, and surely we have all of those things in game now, right? Yeah, exactly. But instead, what happened after the Homestead demo was everybody and their mother shouted down critics with, well, look how much content they're holding back. They probably have mountains of it. We're gonna have more content than we know what to do with any day now. Yeah, all of those comments aged super well. So please, Chris, do what you did last year. Keep it grounded and realistic. I don't want to see stuff that isn't going to be in game either. Like showing a rest stop just outside of ArcCorp. I mean, there should be a rest stop that close, and I'm pretty disappointed that you got rid of it. But there's a lot of things if you go back through all the old demos that were just basically put in these demos to hype people, and then they never showed up in game. Don't do this. I mentioned earlier in the video that the new solar system was going to be in both sections of this video, so here that is. While I welcome new sights and scenery to Star Citizen, because for anybody who's been here the entire time the PU has been live, we've been stuck in a pretty small sandbox looking at the same empty stuff for quite a while now. The day when Star Citizen starts getting lush green planetary bodies with true forest, rolling grassy plains, and clean lakes will be heavily celebrated by this backer. However, since the rumor mill is indicating Pyro as our next solar system, it's going to be more of Stanton, where Stanton is a system filled with planets and moons that mostly look the same, either dull gray or a kind of desert brown. Pyro is a system of volcanic and wasteland. There's no gem buried in there, where in Stanton, Hurston at least has some ugly brown plains and a few sparse forest areas. Pyro is a volcanic body next to a volcanic body next to a barren wasteland next to a volcanic body. That means we could be looking at another 3 years of a solar system that basically looks and feels the exact same everywhere you go. Now, my complaint and why I don't want to hear about Pyro, however, isn't that it's all visually unappealing to me. What I don't want to hear Chris or anyone from CIG talk about, if they announce Pyro, is a new solar system that's going to be as bland and empty as the one we have now. If they announce Pyro at Citizencon this year, they need to also be showcasing a solar system that has some life to it, outposts that function, rest stops that you can actually save your spawn to, NPC life both in space and on the ground, new missions that reflect the solar system. Don't just repeat all the same mistakes as Stanton with a new system we are expected to derp around in for the next few years. It's time Star Citizen starts putting meat on its bones, and another empty dead solar system is just another bone. That's not meat. Another major thing I don't want to hear anything about is a new capital ship concept. We have plenty from the Hull E, Endeavour, Idris, Javelin, Pioneer, Polaris, Kraken, Nautilus, and so on. There are a lot of capital class ships, and the only one in game right now is the recent 890 jump, which is an absolute mess between beds not functioning, terrible fuel economy and recovery, elevators that aren't loading right, lack of places to refuel it, lack of ports it can land on, and so on. The last thing Star Citizen needs right now is another capital class promise. If you want to hype wallets for big spending, show the progress on the many outstanding capital concepts. I'm sure that there are a lot of whales out there or people who have built up credit over time who are still sitting on the fence over these larger ships until they're closer to being realized and not just a dream. The Idris and the Javelin have been in development for so long now, and neither of them are finished. So it doesn't seem wise or realistic to throw another Kraken on the workload just to sucker in more money. And I'm sure all of the industrial miners out there are waiting to go full riot mode if the Kraken shows up in game before the Orion. But that's the problem you create for yourself when you sell these big expensive ships. The owners are constantly going, where's my Kraken? What's the status of my Javelin? When, CIG? When? I kind of talked about the next one a little bit earlier in the video, where I mentioned not being super stoked on CIG for putting up new concepts and then prioritizing them. But one of the bullet points for the 2019 Citcon schedule is learn about the new ships of Citizencon, which really sounds like it's possible we could be seeing new concept ships during Citizencon, which would be pretty normal as they have historically always had new concepts during these events. While I'm fine seeing new concepts, what I really don't want to see is more of the same crap. Oh, another Aegis bomber? Oh, an Anvil fighter? How original! There are nearly a dozen manufacturers in Star Citizen's universe now, and most of them have very limited offerings. If you're going to drop new concepts, please mix things up. A Drake mining ship, an Aegis multi-crew explorer, an Anvil hauling ship that's up-armored like the Gemini for supplying combat zones. Give us some more diversity to your ship manufacturers. I know I'm not the only person who gravitates towards one company or the other based on design styling, so it would be really great to have multiple career options within each manufacturer versus, oh look, another ship that does X from manufacturer Y who already has a bunch of that. That's really cool. One of the things Elite Dangerous does so well is having different manufacturers of ships who all have their kind of unique design flavors, and then you're free to use them however you outfit them, from combat to mining. However, since Star Citizen has gone down the path of having ships be purpose-built, it would be really nice to have more options within manufacturers. If I'm an Origin fanboy, I'd love to have a more sleek and luxury-flavored ship for whatever it is I want to do in the Star Citizen universe. Okay, this next one might be a bit controversial because I know there are backers out there who just eat this crap up, but they're definitely the minority of gamers. CIG. Please don't do any of that campy, cringe-inducing roleplay demo crap. It's cringe as hell, it almost always falls apart because the demo crashes and then your QA team struggles to suddenly jump back into the script, and it just feels embarrassing to watch. And furthermore, it has almost always been used as a ploy to play smoke and mirrors with the progress of the project. Example time! The demo where CIG suddenly shoved Faceware partnership into the game. It starts off with two of your players meeting in a bar, and the primary player is accepting a mission from Miles Eckhart. And after the contract is accepted, she walks over to her fellow player, and she's going to go do the mission with him, and he's like, "Wait, you're a guy?" To which she stutters through the script with, "Yeah, why not? I wanted to try something different. What do you think of my look?" No, stop, Chris. How about she says, "Yeah, why not? Cloud Imperium still hasn't been able to get female models in the game yet at this point. Maybe next year." That at least would have been realistic. Same demo. By the way, it was Gamescom 2017 for anybody who wants to relive that magic. They start getting chased by a Cutlass and a Buccaneer. So what happens? They throw open the back of the rover and the player starts exclaiming in character how they're being chased by a Cutlass and, oh gee, she doesn't have a shot with her handheld railgun. Holy crap, this scene is so aggravating. Do you know how many railgun shots it takes to blow up a Nox hover bike? I want to say it's at least 2 full charge hits. It might have been 3. It's hard to remember. You want to know how many charge shots it takes to bring down a weak shield fighter like a glaive? Way more than 8. I can tell you that for a certainty after getting pinned down by one at Jump Town back in 3.3. But here, our heroine one-shots the Cutlass out of the sky. Or does she? Because she clearly misses and then it just blows up on script. Backers go on and on about how they love these live demos from CIG because compared to other companies, they're real and they don't fake it. But they very clearly do fake it with an assortment of cheats from God mode, scripted kills, super weapons, and having assets specifically built for the demo, like the sandstorm and its sound effects. CIG literally released a behind-the-scenes video after that demo of the developers talking about how they specifically made things to produce that demo. It wasn't for the overall game, it was to do the Homestead demo. If that doesn't fall under faking it, I don't know what does. So, if the objective is to force a result and show off specific things, why do them live? Why not just pre-record this stuff before Citizencon? That way, the demo looks more professional. We don't get Chris on stage like he is every year going, we had a crash. Hold on. Let me get more and more angry as I stand here for 10 minutes while they try to recover. There are many instances of these demos where CIG clearly fakes things for the sake of presenting a state of the game that just isn't real. While it's obviously nitpicky for me to complain about the railgun being a totally unrealistic representation or using script commands to further their demo plot, things like the sandstorm and the Homestead demo are pretty major. That demo gave a completely unrealistic representation of the game from start to finish. Don't do this crap, CIG. If you insist on doing a live play demo, just have them play the mission, or show off the thing you're working on, or is about to be in the next patch. Save the role-playing cinematic atmosphere. I know that's a struggle for Chris because he probably looks at his morning dump through a director's lens, but just try a little. One of the last and most aggravating things for me as a backer that I don't want to see is that tithead Tony Z on stage running his flappers for hours about anything. That guy, single-handedly, is probably more responsible for the state of passionate backer overhyping than anything else in the project, even Chris Roberts. While it's obviously Chris's job to rein that dingleberry in, I've seen plenty of videos where somebody asks a question on Twitch, YouTube, pre-selected comments, and Tony and Chris are sitting there with Ben or Jared answering them, and Tony starts going on and on and on and on and on and on with the most convoluted, drawn-out explanation of how you might do this, or what the finished game could be maybe like pertaining to this one mechanic, and you can just see the sense of Jesus Christ, stop already on Chris's face. Go back to any clip of Tony talking about the law system and you get a sense real quick about what I'm talking about. The complexity of how he wants mechanics to work in Star Citizen is so overblown and unrealistic to implement, it's mind-blowing. Every time this guy opens his mouth, he's damaging Star Citizen. Maybe not directly, but by giving these huge, overly complex, dreamscaping explanations to backers that they can take and run with until you see weirdos on Spectrum saying stuff like, I'm going to have my 3 accounts and 2 of them are going to be AI crew to help me run my Idris slave ship where I'll go from outpost to outpost trading slaves for goods with the Banu, and then I'll have some of them be my labor on my ship. Some of the attractive females I'll keep for myself and then breed the ugly ones with the strong males to create more slaves, and then I'll use those NPCs I deem worthy and trustworthy to fly my other ships in my fleet, and then I'll use my Hull E to control all the markets, and then when I'm the Bill Gates billionaire of Star Citizen, I'll buy a planet. No, you won't. Stop, dreamer. That stuff is never happening. I get that there are backers who have way too much imagination for what this game is going to be, and there are certain content creators out there that egg them on because it helps feed the cult, which helps those guys stay relevant. But at the end of the day, it's CIG and people like Tony Z that make all of this crap possible because they get asked a simple question like, will I be able to keep people I don't want off of my ship? and he turns it into a half-hour discussion about the intricacies of law and punishment and labor camps and bounty hunting and consequences, and then after he drones on for way too long, he says something like, and that's just one of the ways we could do it in the finished game. Sweet, cool, another Tony Z idea out there floating around, now taken as gospel by some backers who will in turn tell everyone this is what it's going to be. And then it just spreads like fucking syphilis, herpes, cancer. So to cliff note this, don't put Tony Z out there, and additionally, stop giving vague, maybe this is what it's going to be like, answers in general. We're 7+ years into development. You should have all of the game mechanics planned out by now in terms of how you want them to function, how you're going to implement them. Like, this is amateur indie dev intro to game design college course crap. For people who are constantly heralded as being geniuses of the industry, it blows my mind every time you guys talk about mechanics like you aren't sure yet how it's going to be done. At this stage of the game, like, it was one thing when the year was 2014 and things were still being sorted out with a tentative release date that was still 2 years to come. But it's 2019 now, with no one on this planet having a clue when Star Citizen is going to move out of alpha, much less release, and you still have no idea how the majority of your game is going to work. Stop this. Sit down in one of your big boy meetings, talk about all the different features you want in before transitioning out of alpha, and then decide how you want them to work. It's time to stop throwing the wide net to lure in as many backers as possible and start giving actual answers for what your game is going to be. One of the biggest problems that Star Citizen is going to face, whether it's this year or 10 years from now, is when Chris finally has to man up and start telling people, Star Citizen is going to be this, it's going to work like this, it's going to have this. Because he spent so many years telling everyone that Star Citizen is the game for them, when it's just not possible that Star Citizen is the game for me as a hardcore PvPer who wants Lost to be real and fast skill-based combat. But Chris also insists Star Citizen is the game for the backer who doesn't ever want to PvP, wants things like auto gimbals or automated turrets, and couldn't care less that the flight model makes dogfighting miserable. I would have no problem chalking up a ton of the arguments I see on Spectrum and Reddit over Star Citizen solely on people being absolutely positive that X mechanic works the way they think it does, because CIG has spent years giving vague answers to how the game is going to play. But the other person also thinks it's going to be the complete opposite, because they also have years of CIG giving vague answers that supports their side. To be honest, there are a lot of things I don't want to see talked about or shown at Citizencon this year. But in the end, the most important thing is that I'm tired of CIG pissing on backers and calling it rain. Stop misrepresenting the state of the project just to make the quick cash during Citizencon that without fail ends with people being jaded and upset the rest of the year because they were lied to. If the next great Jesus mechanic is going to take another 2 years, just say as much. While development obviously isn't a predictable, easy to plot out thing, there are things CIG does that are just blatantly lying, from saying Squadron 42 this year for 4 years. Like, come on. At that point, you know damn well it isn't releasing that year. Stop. You don't have a hiccup that postpones release by 4 years. It clearly wasn't ready the first time, and you lied about it being complete that if all the employees had played it. Or things like Star Citizen 3.0 being totally done, but getting delayed a year so it could be polished up to Chris's standards, only to release with less than a quarter of the promised content and features, and they were all unplayable and broken anyways. Like, don't lie about it. This is supposed to be the most open and transparent development ever, right? Star Citizen used to have the most loyal and understanding backers I have ever seen, and yet year after year they degrade that little by little with giving false promises and outright lies. As the project rolled into 2019, Chris promised that all the delays were because he was an optimist, and he liked to set roadmap goals based on his belief that they could really get it done if they just worked hard. He promised that 2019 was going to be a roadmap of realistic expectations, and that things they knew they could accomplish. Instead, we saw a year unfold where every time a quarter patch came due, the bulk of the features were cut and pushed into the next patch or even further down the road, many falling off of the year completely. I bring this up because in years past, Chris has whipped up hype by showing off long stretch roadmaps that would show years in advance. We were supposed to be well into the 4.x patches by now, according to one of them. So, Chris, if you're going to show anything like that this year, keep it realistic, grounded, and honest. Even being the critic I am of the project, I can respect and tolerate long delivery times if I know they're going to happen. If ship refueling and repairing isn't coming until 2020, just tell me that, and I won't be waiting for it in 2019, only for it to magically disappear yet again. If we aren't going to get the bulk hauling with our Hull E series ships, don't tell me it's coming in 3.0, only for it to ghost for 2 years and counting. I constantly see people who can't tolerate critical opinions shouting down backers with crap like, "You're just entitled and you want it now!" No, you cult boy fanatic. Maybe some of us have been here a long time and we're getting tired of hearing X feature is going to be done in 2017 or 2018 or 2019. And we wait year after year as X feature gets pushed, nudged, and finally just disappears and CIG doesn't even say a word about it. It's very frustrating when CIG gives what are obviously unrealistic timelines for game features and doesn't have the balls to step up and say, sorry, this isn't coming for another year or more, until like a month or less before you're expecting them to be delivering it. You want to keep saying dumb crap like critics are spoiled, entitled gamers who just want it now, but many of us have been here the entire project's lifetime, which getting ever closer to a decade, and when the overall completion is barely crawling towards 20%, I think those backers have every right to be critical of CIG constantly missing deadlines by months to years. So while Citizencon is traditionally the biggest marketing expo Star Citizen has, and while I'm fine with CIG trying to make that funding influx to keep them going through the next year, you can absolutely do that without being shady in the process. Gamers are huge on loyalty, and I think that's something that companies often disregard when it suits them, and then suddenly count on when they want it. How many times have you heard Chris, Sandy, Jared, Ben, or any of the other big members of Cloud Imperium talk about how their backers are the most supportive and loyal in the world, yet they don't think that they can count on those backers to stand by the project if they give realistic timelines and expectations? Yeah, I don't doubt that there are backers who would financially stop spending if they knew the game feature they wanted wasn't coming out for another 5 years, but you would also have a lot more trust with your community, and I guarantee breaking some hard truths to your backers would also keep more of them around versus giving them false hope that then turns them towards resentment and mistrust until they eventually start walking away from the project entirely because you keep promising something that never shows up. Looking back on previous Citizencon presentations, as well as the old Gamescom ones, back when CIG used to attend those, it definitely felt like there was a slight shift from presenting and showcasing outrageously unrealistic things to more grounded and near-term previews, especially with 2018, which is a trend I hope to see Cloud Imperium continue with 2019 and onward. For those of you wondering, yes, I will be hosting the Citizencon 2019 stream here on the channel again this year. For those of you attending for whatever reason, be it to escape RSI censorship or to go, "Oh, look, FTR, see how amazing this is? You know nothing, Jon Snow." I don't mind. All are welcome. The only thing that I'm going to ask is that you guys keep it civil this year. It was a bit of a madhouse last year, especially with a couple thousand people watching. I can't stand slow-mo chat, so please don't give me a reason to turn that on so I can tell you not to say stupid stuff to each other. Additionally, this year I'm going to try to keep any narration silent unless it's during a slow point in the presentation, or to offer my opinion on something during one of the almost certain technical difficulty periods CIG has. So basically, if you've ever watched me do a stream where I'm playing a story-based game and I don't respond during cutscenes, that's essentially what I'm shooting for this year. With that said, I'm sure there are many things I left out on both the do's and don'ts of Citizencon, so feel free to bring those up in the comments and I'll try to give my thoughts on them as much as possible. But with that, we are roughly 10 days out from Citizencon, and I hope to see you guys there. Or, well, here, I guess. As always, I am Failure to Report. Stay safe out there, and I'll see you all next time.